Okay, so today we're putting on our detective hats. We're going to try to piece together one man's entire life, just from the paper fragments he left behind. And what a story it is. This is the incredible journey of Ernest William Thompson, a life of amazing resilience that we've managed to build from these old documents.
And that really brings us to the big question here. Can you actually rebuild a person's life from just a handful of dusty records and official forms? We think the answer is a resounding yes.
Our first clue is this, a school register. But this isn't just any school. This one little entry places young Ernest not in a cozy family home, but right inside the walls of a Victorian institution.
Then this pops up in the archives, a marriage certificate. It's just a single piece of paper, but wow, it signals this huge shift in his life towards love, family, and a brand new start. And finally, this piece of the puzzle, a military record. This document throws Ernest's story right into the middle of the First World War, a massive global conflict that just changed everything for everyone. So we've got school, marriage, war. Let's see if we can connect the dots. So let's start at the very beginning, which for Ernest was probably the toughest chapter of his life. We're talking about his childhood, which he spent living the stark reality of the Victorian workhouse system. And here he is. In this register from the West London District School, we find his name, April 28, 1875, Ernest Thompson, age 13, is admitted. But this wasn't an ordinary school, not by a long shot. It was basically an institution for poor and destitute children, often a direct pipeline into the local workhouse. To really get what Ernest's childhood was like, you have to understand the workhouse. I mean, for a kid, this was a life of super rigid discipline, not a lot of food and hard labor. You were completely cut off from the outside world. It was truly the last resort for people who had absolutely nowhere else to go.
In this timeline, it just shows you how unstable his youth really was. In 1875, he's in that school, but by the 1881 census, which weirdly lists him as 9 years old, even though he'd be older, he's no longer a scholar. Now, the official term is inmate. Then jump to 1886, and he's formally admitted to the Paddington workhouse itself. His whole childhood was just this cycle of being in one institution after another. Just look at this map from 1888. It really shows you the sheer scale of the world he was living in. The Paddington workhouse was this huge, imposing complex. It wasn't just a building. It was this physical symbol of the system that completely defined Ernest's early years. But then, just when you think you know how his story's going to go, it takes this incredible, dramatic turn. He starts to build a completely new life for himself, piece by piece, brick by brick. And right here in the 1901 census, one little word changes absolutely everything. Under occupation, Ernest is listed as a baker. Think about that. He is no longer an inmate. He has a skilled trade. He is an independent man. And with that independence, well, that came the chance to build a family. This marriage certificate from April 1897 is the moment that Ernest, the boy from the workhouse, married Kate Elizabeth Eads. He was building a life that was entirely his own. Fast forward to 1911, and the transformation is just complete. This census record shows Ernest Thompson as the head of his own household. He's living with his wife, Kate, and their 3 children, Ethel, Ernest Jr., and George. He finally has everything he never had as a kid, a real home and a family. I mean, the contrast is just staggering, right? In 1881, he was labeled an inmate. 30 years later, in 1911, he is the head of household. It's an incredible testament to his resilience, and it's all captured right there in the cold official language of the census. But just as Ernest had built this stable life for himself, the entire world around him just descended into total chaos. The Great War began, and it called on men from all walks of life, and that included a 40-year-old baker from Paddington. So this is his attestation paper, the moment he officially joined the army. And you have to look at the date, August 8th, 1914. Britain had only been at war for 4 days. At 40 years old, a husband and a father of 3, Ernest was one of the very first to answer the call. And his discharge papers, they record his total time in service, 1 year and 261 days. That's a pretty significant commitment for a man in his 40s, which he gave freely to the war effort. So why did his service end? Well, it wasn't a heroic battle wound. In this surprisingly ordinary twist, his medical report says the cause for discharge was flat foot, and it even notes it was not a result of his service. After everything he'd been through in his life, his Army career ended because of a pre-existing condition.
Ernest came back from the war and he went on to live a very long life. And our last few documents, they give us a really touching glimpse into his final days.
This is the last will and testament of Ernest William Thompson, dated May 2nd, 1950. The boy from the workhouse is now an old man, putting his affairs in order at the end of what was a long and truly remarkable life.
And then, just a few weeks later, on May 30th, 1950, Ernest passed away. He was 79 years old. The boy who started his life with absolutely nothing managed to live a full, long life. But hang on, there's one final, really touching detail hidden in these last two documents. His will, it names a Miss G.P. Cook as his only beneficiary. And then you look at the death certificate, and the informant who was present at his death was also G.P. Cook. The paper trails strongly suggest that at the very end of his long journey, Ernest was not alone. From a workhouse inmate to a baker, a husband, a father, and a soldier, Ernest Thompson's life is just this powerful story of triumph against all odds. His paper trail proves that even the most boring official documents can tell a deeply human story. And it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many other incredible stories of resilience are just sitting there waiting to be discovered in the quiet records of ordinary lives?